Welcome to the Angus Report. I'm Clint Mefford, and we're bringing you the latest cattle news and education. This week we discuss the perfect cow. 2019 looks to be another great year of premium quality beef supply. We preview an I Am Angus production losing ground, and we head down to Louisiana to visit the Roussel family of 12-Star Ranch. This is the Angus Report. Dusty Abney, a cow-calf stocker nutritionist for Cargill Animal Nutrition, spoke at the 2019 Cattle Industry Convention in New Orleans. We caught up with Abney, who describes the performance traits his perfect cow would have.
So today in my discussion with the producers, I talked about my perfect cow, and that's kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing because it's a pie graph that shows what a cow's year looks like. And to me, a perfect cow is a cow that has a calf every year, and she does that year after year, and she does that with a minimum of inputs from us, and she does it efficiently, and she does it profitably.
He also discussed the implications of not getting a cow bred on time.
If you look at the math, you've got about 1 day a year to get a cow bred. If we're going to have a calf on or before the date she had it this year, when you break it down, you got 1 day a year to get that cow bred. And if you don't, then what you've got there is another 21 days before you can breed her, which is about 42 pounds of calf that you don't get to sell, and you'll never make that back up. And in today's prices, that's $50 to $60 a margin. So my perfect cow has that calf every year. She has it every 12 months. She raises it. The calf walks off the place. He walks across somebody's scales, and we have a profitable operation.
While protein is an important component of cow herd nutrition, it may not always be the reason for deficiencies in body condition. Abney explains some misconceptions associated with nutrition deficiencies and how those deficiencies could have a domino effect on reproductive success, fetal programming, and the future success of a calf.
In the nutrition industry as a whole, as far as cattle nutrition goes, for years and years, we've talked over and over about protein. And protein is very important, and for a lot of people, protein is the rate-limiting nutrient in their operation. But if you've got thin cows in a time of year when they're not supposed to be thin, protein is probably not what's holding you back. In that scenario, and in a lot of different scenarios, calories, energy, TDN, NEG, NEM, I don't care how you talk about it, but the amount of energy going into that cow, that's what's holding you back when she's thin. That's what puts fat on her back. I'm not necessarily telling you I want you to have a fat cow. I want you to have a cow that's in the appropriate body condition score for your environment for the time of year that you're working on there. So making sure that her needs are balanced and her requirements are being met in a balanced fashion, that's really where the rubber meets the road as far as nutrition and that cow and body condition score, getting her bred, fetal programming, all that stuff comes back in to how many calories a day does she need versus how many is she getting.
When it comes to body condition, most producers are concerned with keeping weight on their cows and heifers. But overconditioned females can have just as many problems as their underconditioned counterparts.
When we talk about animals and body condition score, most of us think about animals being too thin. There are some scenarios where we get animals too fat. It's not that common in cows. Most people make a cow work for a living, which is fine. I don't want to see her slip below a 5.5 if I can help it. There are some folks that take too good a care of their cows and they get them above a 6, paying for it. And what I'm talking about there is if they're just on a pasture and maybe you're a little understocked and they get a little pudgy one time of the year, I'm not worried about that. But if you paid money to get that cow too fat, that's a problem. My major issue with people is heifers. That's the one animal that I have to really watch people because it feels good to feed your own heifers. It's emotionally satisfying to see the genetics that you developed over a number of years in this set of heifers and think about what the future is going to be. And I want you to take good care of them. I want those heifers to have the nutrition that they need. But a fat heifer does nobody any good, especially if we paid to get her fat. There's a number of different things we can have happen there. We can have a heifer that's got too much fat packed around a repro tract. That can have dystocia problems for that heifer. We can put a lot of fat into her udder, and that can mean she doesn't milk as well. She could be tough to breed because she's too fat. Those are things, none of that is what I want for anybody to have in a cow or a heifer. So we've got to find that balance. Balance is something I talk about over and over. Find that balance point of just right is what we're looking for. So the Goldilocks scenario with heifers is we don't want her to be too fat, we don't want her to be too thin, we want to develop her into a cow, we want her to learn to graze, we don't want her to be dependent on the feed bunk. We want to develop the future of our herd, and most people are going to keep a heifer if they can for 10 years. That's what we'd really like. That's what we'd like our goal to be. So the decisions we make all the way back to when that heifer's in gestation inside the cow, the decisions we make for her mama for nutrition then, and then while we're developing her after we wean her, to make her into a cow, to get her bred, to put enough ribs into her and enough guts into her so she has the room and capacity to support herself and her calf. That's the Goldilocks scenario. Not too much, not too little, just right.
Abney says producers should look at the expenses of developing their cow herd as adding value rather than looking at it as adding costs.
I think it's really important that producers understand the difference in value and cost. Back when a 5-cent move in the corn market was a really big deal, we didn't really have to worry that much about a changing market and what things cost this year versus last year, and you could kind of lock into one program and be pretty okay. But these days, if you look at this year where we had the big increase in what distillers grains cost, or wheat mids were hard to get, or corn was way less expensive than it usually was, we've got to take those things into account. And if we understand not just what something costs per ton, but what the value of that product or that byproduct or that commodity, whatever it may be, or a dewormer or a vaccination program or a mineral program, whatever that is, the value that brings to us over and above for what it costs per ton, maybe it's better to look at it per head per day. Maybe it's better to look at it on a cost to gain standpoint. Different scenarios require different metrics to really realize the value or the lack thereof that something may or may not bring to your program.
Talk with your local extension agent about management practices to develop your cow herd. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more Angus Report after a break.
Welcome back to the Angus Report. 2019 looks to be another great year of premium quality beef supply. Nicole Ursig has more with the Certified Angus Beef Market Report.
Today I have with me Paul Dykstra, beef cattle specialist for the Certified Angus Beef brand, and we are talking about the market. So Paul, we just got off of 2018, we're into the first quarter of 2019. 2018 was a great year for beef. We're sitting on biggest supply of premium quality beef we've ever had. Do you see the pendulum swinging the other way in 2019?
No, there won't be any pendulum swing. As a matter of fact, a continuation of greater supplies in 2019 as projected in terms of the overall cattle supply. But in terms of quality as well, amazingly, we did have some record-setting months in 2018. We'll see as good of months here in 2019 as well from a standpoint of Certified Angus Beef brand supply as well.
So how is this affecting the consumer's experience with beef?
Well, the good news is the consumer benefits because there is more access in areas that previously did not have it. We're seeing more high quality beef, branded beef in parts of the country that didn't have it before, and that's just a result of our collective response to the consumer's demand for higher marbling product.
So when we talk about record supplies, that's not just beef. We're looking at record protein supplies, chicken, pork, and when it comes to price, beef is always going to be the most expensive. What do we see with these record protein supplies? How's beef performing?
Well, that gap continues to widen between beef and our competition. So it's a tougher battle for us in terms of that price point. But fortunately, taste is one of the main drivers of consumers' preferences and what they purchase at the store. So given the fact that we are providing them a very high quality, very satisfactory eating experience with our product, their demand for it is also increasing. So I think the outlook is very good and the trend is the direction that we need to be on in the beef business.
Yeah, when they're tasting great beef, they're going to come back.
Absolutely right.
Thanks, Paul. For more market information, head over to cabcattle.com and subscribe to the CAB Insider, a bi-weekly email newsletter written by Paul. For the CAB Market Report, I'm Nicole Ursig.
We check in now on the latest cattle market news with the Cattle Facts Update.
Hello, and welcome to the Cattle Facts Update. I'm Troy Bockelman. The USDA released the March cold storage report, and total red meat and poultry in cold storage was estimated at 2.41 billion pounds. This is down 2% from February and well below the 2.68 billion pound record in September of 2018. Total beef in cold storage was 450 million pounds, of which over 90% is boneless beef. As slaughter levels decreased through the first part of the year, beef in cold storage to end March was down 60 million pounds from January. Pork in cold storage was steady with year ago at 610 million pounds. Chicken in cold storage was 846 million pounds, down 3% from a year ago and down from the record high 958 million pounds in September of 2018. Seasonally, cold storage increases into the late fall, and that is expected this year. One thing that might play a factor and support cold storage is the expectation of increased exports for pork and broiler in 2019. As China continues to battle African swine fever and the resulting pork shortage, the U.S. production system is set to assist in filling the gap. In the accompanying chart, the red line is 2018 and at the high end of the 5-year range. February cold storage exceeded that level, and the remainder of 2019 will likely see the range tested as well. Significant increases in cold storage volumes can give an indication of product that is struggling to move through the pipeline to the final consumer. As expansion continues across all major proteins and increased pork and broiler exports are forecast, increased cold storage levels are expected as the market determines the timing and the needs of the supply channel. Beef in cold storage as a percent of production is at 21%, down 2% from the 3-year average. Pork and chicken in cold storage are also below year-ago levels and the 3-year average. Even with the historically large levels of product in cold storage and larger production across the major proteins, product continues to move efficiently to the final consumer. For the Angus Report and Cattle Facts, I'm Troy Bockelman.
To learn more about Cattle Facts, your leading source for beef industry market information, visit cattlefacts.com.
Next on the Angus Report, we preview the next I Am Angus production, Losing Ground. Stay with us.
Welcome back. The American Angus Association is proud to present the first film to expose the impact of urban sprawl on American agriculture, Losing Ground. We sat down with our teammate Josh Kamenelis, the director of the film, to discuss the impact urban sprawl has had on Angus breeders across the country.
So this year we're working on a film called Losing Ground, and this is a film that tackles the issue of urban sprawl in America. Because we're part of the Angus Association, because we're connected with the Angus membership, we went all over the country and interviewed Angus breeders and asked them, how is urban sprawl impacting you? And we can take those messages and send those directly to the consumer so they can be hearing from ranchers and hearing from farmers. So we think it's a wonderful opportunity for that reason. And at the same time, what that does for the Angus breeder is it positions the Angus breeder as leaders in the industry, as thought leaders, as people who are tackling huge issues as a way of benefiting others in the cattle industry and in the ag industry in general. And there are a few documentaries out there that are about urban sprawl from an urban point of view, talking to urban planners, talking about the vitality of urban life and things like that, but nothing talking about farmland. Nothing talking about how when those cities spread, they're taking up farmland, what's the implication for our food supply. The immediate reality is that it's just a huge issue. It's a national issue, it's a regional issue, it's different in regions around the country. So the first question was, how do we tell this story and what's the scope of it? So what we did was we got connected with our membership through our regional managers to find those specific real-world stories of people dealing with urban sprawl. So we could talk about it not just in a conceptual, big-picture, national way, but also in a personal, individual way, and find out not just what are the numbers, not just what is the economic reality, but what's the personal reality of people losing land? What does that mean to them? What does that mean to their family and their history? And so really through personal connections, as being a part of the Angus Association, we were able to find several people in different key regions of the country that have experienced some of the most significant growth. We were able to find essentially a couple ranches that were dealing with urban sprawl in a negative way and a couple that were dealing with it in a positive way. So we could tell the stories that basically say, here's how people are struggling in the face of urban sprawl and what some of the dangers might be, and here's how people are thriving in the face of urban sprawl and some of the opportunities people might find. So really there's practical applications within the film for the farmer and rancher audience as well, as far as here's how these ranchers have taken urban sprawl and used it to their advantage and used it as an economic opportunity, as a new marketing opportunity, and found creative solutions surrounding that. And here's the farmers who are struggling in the face of urban sprawl, and here's some things that someone in that situation might try in terms of land preservation and in terms of reaching out to the local community to find new opportunities. So it's easy to drive through, especially the Midwest, and feel like we have we have plenty of land. It certainly seems like we have a lot of land, but it's a little more complicated than that, we found out as we dug into the research. The two main reasons are, and farmers and ranchers would know this firsthand, that land doesn't have equal value everywhere. There's highly productive land, there's less productive land. Some of the most productive land is actually right next to cities. So the land we're losing the fastest is the highest quality, most vital land. And then you add on top of that, that the demand for food is going up, that the population is increasing, and not only are we losing some of our best ground and our total ground that we have to raise food, but the demand is going up and up and up. And when you pair those two things together, you see down the road a really dire situation emerging. And it's one of those things where people may say, oh, it'll be fine. And then, many, many years from now, we'll be asking ourselves, why didn't we deal with this before we were experiencing some of those dire consequences?
Losing Ground airs on May 27th at 7 p.m. Central Time on RFD TV, and then will be housed on our YouTube channel, Angus TV. Up next, we visit the Roussel family in Louisiana. We'll be right back.
I got a feeling that people are going to go hungry.
The food supply in the United States is going to really hurt.
It's imperative to our national security. Hungry people aren't strong people.
It doesn't make for a very safe place to live when people start fighting over food.
Some folks can see the fact that we've lost 31 million acres of farmland in 20 years and say, that's not a big deal.
Rivers of cars and trucks compressed, between houses stacked like cordwood, between parking lots and mini malls, ready to serve anonymous strangers.
Urban sprawl is when development begins to encroach on areas that had been rural.
Usurp more earth, sterilize and seal it from the sun and rain.
We knew we were losing farmland, but we're actually losing farmland almost twice as fast as we thought before. 1.5 million acres a year.
When I came back, everything was gone.
175 acres every hour.
I don't think it matters what we name these streets. We're still on somebody's pasture. That will never be a pasture again.
3 acres a minute.
This will probably be the last time the barn needs to be painted anyway, because 10 years from now, it will be down.
It is alarming. It should be alarming. That is an irreplaceable resource.
The relentless waves of wealth and debt that may go hungry with no landscapes left to feed their souls or flesh.
That's the mindset we need to turn around. It is a big deal.
Welcome back to the Angus Report. In Kentwood, Louisiana, the Roussel family bloodlines pulse with their Cajun heritage. Just like the long history of the Angus breed, the Roussel family can trace their Bayou lineage back to the late 1700s. Although their Angus cattle business may be relatively new to the family, they have been snake-bitten by the business breed. When not tending to their cattle, the family can also be found in their family-owned jewelry store or on their front porch playing traditional Cajun music.
So being Cajun, probably the biggest or funnest thing in Cajun is maybe just the way we talk. No matter where we go in the country or anywhere, they figure out you're from Louisiana. You know, we know where you're from Louisiana. 12 store over here, we run about 135 head of mama cows, and every October we have our bull sale, and we sell about 45 bulls, and we carve out maybe 15 to 20 heifers. I guess we have farming in the Roussel blood, because in the early 1700s is when we have records of our family farming in Louisiana. There's nothing like Louisiana when it comes down to food and you know, we go crabbing, we go fishing. You know, where we're crabbing today, that was our backyard. That was our playground and growing up as kids, and still is. One of the interesting things is every section of Louisiana has their own culture, and I took a fiddle lesson in Lafayette just so I can learn the music culture of Lafayette. We have a jam group, we call ourselves the P-Town Ramblers, and we just play music from all spectrums, you know, and we just like to entertain and play, and it's just a way to forget about the rest of the world. We like to have a good time. On a full-time basis, what we do is we own a store called Roussel's, and it's a jewelry gift store. I just fell in love with the diamond business and everything, the aspect of it, and dealing with that customer and the emotional side of selling diamond rings. I believe that, I guess, God sends you with certain gifts, and when something touches your heart, you know, forget about anything else you're doing, chase it. So when we started raising Angus cattle in South Louisiana, I remember going to a sale with my neighbor, all-breed production sale, bull sale, and it was quick to notice that the Angus cattle were selling faster and higher than the rest of the breeds. And then I went to a female sale with a friend, and same thing happened. Angus cattle all sold, they had demand for them. The rest of the breeds were a little sluggish, and I'm like, okay, you know, why would you raise anything else? I was snake bitten with Angus cattle. And then it was like, all right, I want to grow me a herd that produces and been respected in the state of Louisiana. Everything was new to me. Being a first generation Angus breeder, but being in the retail business, we knew that customer service was number one. And that was our first priority, customers and raising good cattle. And I know trends come and go, but if I get a vision in my mind of what I want, then I'm not one that's going to stray off or be convinced to go a different way. I just felt like that Angus mama was just a great mama, and the bull had a demand for it, and trying to breed things that are maternal and low birth weight with a lot of growth. And that was sort of like our goal for the last probably 10, 12 years on that. On the rewarding side of the cattle, kids just growing up in the junior side of Angus, you know, I mean, they would say, what are y'all doing here? You know, you're jewelry store owners. But we understood that if your kids had to take care of their animals and the responsibility to learn, you know, they're the future of everything. You want them to express ideas because it's a changing world out there. You know, since having retail stores, you have to get away from there. You can have the hardest day of work and get here in the evening and fall in love with the outside world, you know, just getting your hands dirty and ride through your cows and all your problems go away. Something about being next to your Angus cattle, there's just some mystique about it.
Well, there's nothing like Angus in the Bayou. And that's a wrap for this week's Angus Report. Tune in next week for industry-leading news and education, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Angus TV, for more highlights from the association. We'll see you next week.